So I was out in a remote area of southern India in Andhra Pradesh working on a project for the government of India when my colleague comes up to me and says, "I think we have a crisis situation." Let me back up. My colleague's name was Susan. She was a vivacious, intelligent, unflappable woman in her early 60s with bright blonde hair and bright red lipstick. She was also a polio survivor, a paraplegic, and she rode in an electric wheelchair. So she struck a quite striking figure in rural India. And that's where we were. We were in this little hut where there was a disability determination camp. We were there to evaluate how the government was determining who has a disability to apply for benefits. So people had been lining up all morning. There were a couple hundred people there, women in saris sitting on the floor with their children, nursing their children, blind people. There was a woman who came in who had no movement below her waist, so she came in crawling on her elbows, on her belly. It was quite the situation, and we were there trying to help out. And Susan comes up to me and says, "I think we have a crisis situation. I need to go to the bathroom, and I'm pretty sure the bathroom here isn't accessible." And I said, "Susan, the accessibility of the bathroom is not the issue. There is no bathroom." She says, "What do you mean there's no bathroom?" I said, "Well, they defecate out in the field." I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I can't go out in my electric wheelchair out into the field over the ditches and the divots and the brush, navigating through other people's business to then be lifted out of my chair and held up next to the road as people go riding by. This is not really an option for me. We're figuring something else out." So we grabbed a couple of the local women. We got in the van that we had rented, the accessible van, and we rode off into the countryside, heading for the nearest village, hoping and praying that something would be there. Because even when there are toilets in rural India, they're not toilets. They're little open pits, right? So this is going to be a challenge. So we got to this village. There was a couple dozen houses, and we came out of the van. And let's say if you have blonde hair and bright red lipstick and you're sitting in an electric wheelchair and you're going down a dirt road in a rural village in India, you attract attention. Matter of fact, you're like the Pied Piper of Hamelin. Every kid crawled out of every little area and started following Susan around. They wanted to play with her joystick, as her electric wheelchair went. And it was like a parade. The women in the village got together and they fanned out looking for an appropriate place for Susan, who was holding it in, trying to wait until we could find an appropriate place. Somebody came running back and said, "We found some place. There's a house that has a bathroom that we think you could use." So we head off in that direction, Susan with her entourage of Indian women with their saris blowing in the wind. We came to the house. There was 2 steps. How are we going to get the wheelchair in? Well, the children said, "Oh, we'll do it." A whole bunch of little Indian kids want to lift a 200 or 300 pounds combined weight into the house. Susan said, "No, we're not doing that." So we looked around, we found a couple pieces of wood, we made a makeshift ramp, and Susan, the Indian women, and her assistant went up the ramp. And Susan goes up this ramp, and as she's going, the wood bends and bows. You hear a little bit of a crack, but she makes it inside. And I'm standing out in the courtyard. A minute goes by, 5 minutes goes by, 10 minutes goes by. The sun is shining on me. I'm sweating through my shirt. The chickens are flying. The children are playing. A goat walks by. He does his business. And I'm waiting to see what's going to happen. And eventually, the door opens, and I see Susan there. And she comes down the rickety ramp, which bows again, but it holds. And she comes up, and she wheels up next to me, and she looks me in the eyes, and she says, "It takes a village."